Hey, Steve, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Just find the button on the machine here that helps me share my screen.
Where is the share
Oh,
button?
here it is. Actually, it's right in the middle at the bottom bar. It's in a big green
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
Uh, so can you see that?
Yes.
All right.
You know what? Why don't you stop sharing because they might have like intro stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't know if we needed to sign up for public speaks. Hello, Dave.
Good morning.
Hi, how you doing?
Hi.
Good.
Are you from the township?
Yes, I'm the assistant township engineer.
Okay. We're here for the 2 or 3 minute public speaks. Did we need to sign up in advance?
No, you don't.
Okay.
I'm a little curious to the topic in which you'd like to speak.
Sure. Engineering inlets in College Hill and proximity to FEMA flood zones. So I came to the township 3 years ago and I'm doing a follow-up.
Thank you. I only joined the engineering team here, not this past May, but the May before.
Oh, okay, so you weren't in the
Uh,
meeting. Yeah.
No. So when you say College Hill area, what streets are you speaking to specifically?
Well, we're not
Odin
speaking
Street.
to any streets.
Right.
We're from Bowdoin, but we're not speaking to any particular street.
Right.
We're speaking for the
Right.
systemic challenge. You'll see
Right.
we have a whole PowerPoint presentation.
Basically,
Okay,
the water
thank you.
flood sound. Right.
Yeah, we have Paul was in the meeting 3 years ago and Nancy Adams, but we have a whole PowerPoint.
Heard my name.
Oh, hi, Paul. It's Gail Greenstein. I don't know if you remember me. I came 3 years ago to the township with a presentation. We just have a follow-up presentation. Yeah,
Welcome.
thank you. I'm here with my neighbor, Stephen Power.
How you doing?
Hello.
Paul, just remind us if the public speaks is 2 minutes or 3 minutes per resident. I forget.
I don't know if we have a limit, but that's really up to Mr. DeLuca.
Three.
3. Okay.
Three at the maximum. You don't have to use 3.
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna get started. Good morning, everyone. Let's see, we have our 3 township committee members, Mayor Adams, Dean Daffis, myself. So we're gonna get started with, just so you know, this is the Engineering, Public Works and Planning Committee meeting. So we're gonna get started with public comment. So if anyone would like to address the committee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. DeLuca. Stephen Power and I are here to make a follow-up presentation. We came to this committee 3 years ago, and Stephen is just going to project a PowerPoint, and we will stick to our 3 minutes. So Steve, if you can project.
Sharing my screen.
Yeah,
Did you
if you
get-
could put it in presentation mode instead of slide sorter.
Oh, shoot. I don't know how to do that. Anyway, I can just scroll down into it.
No,
That's
no,
fine.
no, no. Yeah, just go to the bottom where you see the flip chart. Go to the bottom where it says notes, bottom right with the little squares, the one that.
Oh, I
looks-
see. There we go.
No, the one to the right,
Oh,
the one that looks like a flip chart. No, keep on going. One more. Nope, to the right, to the right, to the right, to the right. Nope, one more. No.
I'm sorry. Why don't we just do it this way? Just do it
All
this
right,
way.
okay, yeah. It's the one that looks like a little movie screen, if you can figure it out while I'm talking. So I just wanna thank you for having us come. Again, we came October 13, 2021, and we're here to just do a follow-up presentation 3 years later. So next slide. I'm sorry, my name is Gail Greenstein, and this is Stephen Power. We're from Bowden Street. We just wanna, preaching to the choir, just a reminder of the current state. We have a little bit more data about the depiction of the issue, and then follow on to a request. And we came here 3 years ago and you listened to us, and we're here to make a follow-on request to remediate the flood in College Hill. So next slide. So you know that College Hill is a part of Maplewood that has a pitch. It's called College Hill for a reason. And you all, when we came to the committee 3 years ago, you did improvements by including 2 new inlets on Bowden Street. We want to thank you for that work. Thank you for including it in the budget, and thank you for your prioritization of the neighborhood, because it's a systemic challenge, as we want to share once again. So just next slide. So what we did 3 years ago is we did a counting of the different inlets, and you could see the disparity with the number of inlets on Bowden. With Yale, which is Higher Street, our inlets are now, the problem areas between Harvard and Tuscan, it's now 4, it was 2. So we want to thank you to that. You all know that the originals are 100-year-old sewers, but we just wanted to remind you of the disparity given the slope of College Hill. So next slide. So the 2 new sewers are useful. We still have an ongoing challenge. Just a quick video. It's not enough to deal with the drainage to the rest of College Hill, and most importantly, down to Prospect and Valley. So we're looking to see if there's any additional inlets that could remediate the systemic challenge that happens with College Hill onto Prospect down to Valley.
Two
and this
times in the same week.
Yeah. So look, next slide. So this is information that may be, again, preaching to the choir. So you know that Bowden Street sits in FEMA X zone, but the water from Bowden is worsening FEMA zone A or V, which is a 1/4 mile away, which is where it all collects down to Valley, down to the golf course. So remediating in College Hill really affects also the FEMA flood zone in A and V. And that's the systemic challenge that we want to continue to advocate for. Just next slide, Steve. So the drainage on Bowdoin, it's mostly between Tuscan and Harvard, and that's where you did prioritize adding 2. So the runoff goes right down Steve's driveway, and we have 2 residents, Scory DeBose, I don't know if he's here. He and another neighbor, Robert Ladd on Prospect, literally put on their boots last time through running water, which was a safety risk to them. They came to our street to see where all the runoff was coming to the FEMA flood zone A or B. And it was really the part of Bowdoin that we're prioritizing in this presentation. So next slide. So this is just quick testimony. I don't know if Scory's online, but Scory and Robert are the 2 men. I don't want to say they risked their life, but it was pretty daunting to have just a rainstorm, have them with their boots trying to go to our street to see what was going on. And this is just some testimony from them. The next slide. So our request is to continue to prioritize FEMA Zone X. We know there's many FEMA zones throughout all of Maplewood, to add the inlets to bring it up to the amount that's on Yale, to really correct the disparity and really look at the systemic impact between our particular area and then the flood zone A and V, which really exacerbates all the issue on Valley Street. So that's what we're here to come request respectfully. So that's all I have to add. Steve, if there's anything you want to say.
Water, the storm drains on Bowdoin are not enough to handle these massive deluges of water. 3 times within a week and a half, they immediately flooded. I mean, I was out there clearing them to make sure there was no leaves or anything like that, but the water goes down my driveway into Gale's yard, back through my backyard, through the house at the corner of Tuscan and Prospect, and then down Tuscan, down towards Baker, and through the yards of the people on the sort of town side of the corner of Baker and Prospect, which is where Scory lives. And it's just getting really severe. And it's getting to the point where it might start flooding out my basement.
But anyway, we wanted to address the systemic challenge with really
Yeah.
correcting something that really affects the residents all down Valley and also in those
Right.
identified flood zones. So anyway, that's what we wanted. You were responsive to our request for 2, but we know there's budget constraints, so we wanted to really advocate for more. Yeah, I will forward the presentation. It's a very big with the graphics, so I'll do it on Dropbox.
Okay, could you stop sharing so we can see each other?
Sure.
Well, thank you for your presentation. Paul, do you want to make any comments?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. DeLuca. So, excellent presentation, by the way. I think what you're describing is a phenomenon that the whole town is experiencing. In August, we had some extreme rainfall events. I want to say that we had between 12 and 15 inches of rain in a matter of 2.5 weeks.
Yes.
Which is unprecedented. I think in one rainfall event, we had 3 inches in literally an hour and a half.
Yes.
So when that happens, there's very few stormwater collection systems in any township that can actually handle that. Now, the town recognizes this. The entire town flooded. I saw videos all over the township of what you just described. Okay, literally waves going down our streets. Our streets became the conveyance systems.
Right.
And it is a problem. There's no question that there is a problem.
Yes.
Climate change is real. And if anyone doesn't believe it by now, I don't know what to tell them.
I'll give them your phone number.
Yeah, we'll show your video. So so I fully appreciate and understand your concerns, your dilemma. The town is keeping a list of areas that have flooded as a result of these storms, and we're taking a closer look at that. Obviously, adding inlets is not necessarily the answer. I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole in engineering, but you have to have a stormwater collection pipe to collect the water and, you know, show that it has sufficient capacity to handle that inflow. So just adding stormwater inlets may or may not be the answer. That's an analysis that has to be done.
right,
We are the town exploring and looking to get into a stormwater utility, which would greatly enhance our ability to fund
mhm,
these types of improvements. This would certainly be an eligible improvement.
mhm,
And we're excited about that possibility of having that reliable funding source for this purpose.
yeah,
You know, when you came to us last time, I think in 21, you said
yes,
we were responsive. We were able to
Yes.
tie in some drainage and
Mhm.
pull some of that water out, which we're
Yes.
happy for.
and it did help, and we're looking
Yeah.
at, yeah,
That's good to
that
hear.
as well, yeah,
But I honestly, I have issues throughout the whole township right
yes, we
now.
know that,
So
yes,
there's competing interests and, you know, we're gonna come up with a logical way of addressing this. The
yes,
first issue is funding these types of improvements and I think the town is making a big step forward in terms of this stormwater utility.
that's
Mhm.
great to hear, yeah, that's great to hear. It was the FEMA information that actually I knew intuitively, but I got the data from, some brokers, and, so I'm sure you know obviously about that, but we were really looking at the systemic runoff to the flood zones A and B, as something that the town would be very interested in mitigating what happens on Valley and down near Janelle and so forth.
So Valley is the sink, right? It's the low
Yes.
spot, so everything flows
Right.
towards the sink. And, you know, I agree with you, Valley is a concern and a problem. It's a major artery, Valley Street,
Yeah.
of our town. So,
Yes,
you know, fortunately, we have the golf course that acts as a natural sink for that water that absorbs a lot of the water, and a lot of those areas flood as a result. There's just, you know, water runs downhill. It's simple.
yes,
So, but you know, that's not to say, you know, it'd be nice if we could have a reliable way of getting that water down there and then addressing it once it's down there. You know,
yeah,
the town's also engaged the Army Corps of Engineers.
Mhm.
You know, we went on a two-day charrette and we're working with the Army Corps of Engineers on
mhm,
improvements, but these are all long-term measures. I just want to
yeah,
stress one last thing. You know, it's important for each homeowner to understand the dilemma the town's in. The climate change has hit
Mhm.
all of New Jersey,
mhm,
our country at, you know, square in the face, and it's a very, you know, this is a relatively short-term measure where this has hit us very quickly.
yes,
So we're quickly trying to change and advance and, you know, adapt to it. But, you know, homeowners can do a lot to help themselves as well in terms
Okay.
of grading their lots, grading away from the land away from their house, you know,
yes,
away
yes,
from their property.
yes.
So there's a lot that can be done from homeowners as well. I don't think it just all falls in the township. I think.
No, I agree. I could give a workshop on that because I'm somebody who has been schooled in all of that, so I
Mhm.
totally agree with you there.
Hey,
Anyway,
Paul,
So,
yeah.
go ahead, Nick.
sorry, just a real quick question for Paul. And maybe I asked this in 2021, I
Mhm.
don't know, remember? Is there a reason there were only 2 inlets to begin with on Bowdoin when there's so many more on Yale? Do you know why that would have been?
You know, I don't, honestly, I think when the stormwater collection system was laid out for this township, I think, you know, the situation was different, right? There wasn't as much
Yeah.
rain, there wasn't as much impervious coverage. You know, for all intents and purposes, that, you know, there was still horse and buggy. And I honestly, I don't think we've accelerated to the rate we need to accelerate to adapt to this
Mhm.
climate change. And that's why we have the stormwater utility. The town's quickly changing. There are conditions, you know, physical existing conditions where you could justify not having 6 inlets and maybe 2 do, you know, do the work and the job. But I don't have a full explanation why there's so little collection in our streets. In general,
Yeah.
the inlets, I mean, NJDOT recommends inlet spacing every 400 to 500 feet. All right, in some cases, we have it every 1,000 or 1,200 feet. You know, and that's just not acceptable. So we have to upgrade, and that's why we're doing the stormwater utility.
Well, I know why we're doing the stormwater utility.
Yeah, that was our question 3 years ago, and that was Nancy, when you had said, Paul, could you look at, you know, could anything be added onto Bowdoin, which got us the total 4, but yeah, it was a mystery to us why Yale had 10, since we're the lower street and we are a key vehicle, obviously, down to Valley. Yeah,
I honestly don't have an answer. Without doing
Yeah.
the analysis, I couldn't answer you properly.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
just to let you know, this stormwater utility is a fee collection system. So we're gonna and if we can get this approved in December, we'll start next year. It'll be the equivalent of a $70 charge for one unit, one impervious surface unit. And it'll go from $35, because some of the properties are half, to could be thousands of dollars for some of the industrial properties. And in any event, we'll raise about 800, 900,000 a year, and this will be plowed back into the stormwater system. Nothing else, no, not the township revenue, it'll be a segregated fund. But many of these projects are way beyond that in cost. And it also, as Paul said, there's a lot of competing problems. And so we're looking at how to do all this. The fact of the matter is, we have essentially two north-south collection points. We have, Valley and the East Branch of the Rollway River.
Right.
And then we have the Lightning Brook side and Boyden Avenue. And we got problems on both ends that the streets are more intense. And I think you've hit it, where it's not just a matter of adding inlets, it's a systemic solution. We don't know the systemic solution yet.
Right.
Because there's only so much collection area, unless we start taking property and building, detention systems or to retain the water before it gets sent down. The system is just incapable of handling the amount of water that comes out. So we're going to figure this out. We're going to have hopefully we'll pass this. We'll have a stable source of revenue to address this. And we'll start making some progress as early as 2025, but certainly beginning of 2026 and beyond.
Well, thank you for that overview. Anyway, appreciate your attention. And if you're, I know more inlets is not the answer. It did mitigate some things. So I would just, as you're doing your budget and looking, please consider our presentation, given the systemic connection we have to Valley and that FEMA flood zone. So that's all we
And
have.
you'll send that to Paul?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
To Paul and Dan, Dave.
Thank you. We absolutely will.
All right. Thanks everyone for your time.
Thank you very much. This is
Have a
very
great day.
interesting. Really appreciate your help.
All right. Bye
Bye-bye.
now. Bye.
Okay. Nancy, you raised the Parker Avenue parking at the corner of Prospect from Larry Seltzer.
Right. So he said that there's issues with, and they're building a new temple, so they approved that at the zoning board. And they're concerned about parking in that area, but separate and apart from the new temple, they are concerned about the existing conditions of parking. I think I forwarded that to you, Paul. And they're just kind of worried about pedestrian and vehicular safety at that corner, with all the people walking, more people walking to that area when that gets built, but also just existing, and wanted us to look at solutions along Parker and Prospect and try to figure out, if there's things we can do to mitigate the problems, whether it's sightlines, whether there's parking too close to the intersection, things like that maybe we need to take a look at.
Yeah, Mayor.
So I took a look there. There's right now, there's no parking on the south side of Parker from Prospect to about maybe 100 feet to the next block. And I think what's happening is that this is a child care program and a youth program. So they're doing, they're dropping off, they're running in, they're parking there. So maybe, it's clearly an enforcement issue, but we might need to do either cross-hatching or some additional no parking signage.
Yeah, we're happy to take a look.
Okay,
Give you our recommendations.
all right. I don't see Mike here. Is he out collecting leaves? Because that's what I want to talk about next.
I think I could update everyone.
Okay, so give us an update on the leaf. And then I did get some questions from residents about if we use the street sweeper after we come by with the scoop.
So I confirmed with our staff about this. So our process is largely the same. I think last year was a little different than this year. Last year, the leaves fell later in the season. And I think now, because of the dryness and the lack of rain, I think they've fallen earlier and more at once. So the use of the street sweeper, last year we were able to use it longer because there were less leaves. The capacity of the street sweeper is very limited. So it fills up quickly. It doesn't take long for leaves to fill it up. So we're very limited in how we can use that for leaf pickup. And last year, because the leaves fell later, we were able to use it longer. This year, the leaves fell more at once. So this has become more of a leaf removal process, not as much of a, use of the street sweeper. We use pushers, and they have brooms on the bottom. And those bristles help push the leaves and they prevent the gouging of the road. There was a slight change in the way we've done things. Previously, we've used the claws more, the hydraulic claws of our loaders, and they had a tendency to gouge the streets because of the steel. So we've tried to get away from that, and the interim pickups, we're using the pushers to try not to gouge our new roads. And at the end, we would of course use the street sweepers and clean everything up after it's over. So that was the idea behind that. We made some slight changes, and yes, the interim might be a little messier, but I think it's better for the road surface itself.
Okay. And yeah, it did seem like all the leaves just came down at one time. Are you keeping up with the schedule?
We are, but I got to tell you, I was even alarmed at the rate and the speed in which this pile in our yard grew, because it was so quick, and we've been handling the volume, and we're staying on track with the schedule, but it's been a challenge. I got to be honest with you. We've had to shift personnel from other departments. The water and sewer division, we've borrowed people there to lend a helping hand. It's been very difficult to try to keep up with the volume.
So I want to remind you and maybe inform Patrick that we do have an agreement with the laborers union that if we need temporary people, particularly they mentioned, leaf collection and snow removal, these folks are available to bring on a temporary basis. And we've entered into a contract with them, and what they had suggested is rather on the street, but they could do the municipal property, cleaning the leaves at the municipal property, which I'm sure gets maybe a second billing for us because we have so many leaves on the street. But that might be an option to take a look at. So just to bring in a bunch more people to help get ahead of this.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Actually, I wasn't really thinking of using them initially because it slipped my mind, quite frankly. But I think reminding me of that is a good thing, because it may come to a point where we need some additional help, and especially with snow removal, that becomes an issue if we get hit with the big storms. So I appreciate the information and the reminder.
And
I feel like
Patrick,
you're gonna get more leaves than snow. It feels like.
Patrick, we do
I
have
know it does.
a contract. There's an agreement we have with the laborers.
Okay, I'll take a look over it this week,
Okay.
and I'll
Okay.
talk to Paul about what's necessary.
Okay.
Oh, never mind. I won't bring it up. I brought it up with code. It's about other things falling before our later schedule. A few residents have reached out to me about stuff that's on their lawn, like pine cones, like literally covering their lawn, and they can't put them at the street. So I can talk to you offline on that. It's just a few residents.
Okay, sure thing, Mayor.
So I want us to tee up for our next meeting, looking at the operating and capital budgets for 2025. Patrick, does that work with your timing? Okay.
Sorry, yes, it does.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was the same direction we gave all the department heads in terms of when they'll make their presentations.
All right. So that'll be on December 11th. and Paul, we're gonna talk about the utility, but I just want to remind you that the stormwater utility will need a separate budget. And anything you're gonna pull out of your existing budget would have to go into that, both for capital and even some operating, if you wanted to pull out some of the work of the water and sewer folks. And initially, we weren't gonna do that, but remember, the town now is paying roughly $270,000 into that fund for our streets, for the impervious surface of our streets. So I think we've changed course a little bit and said, well, let's put in then, since we have to put that money out, let's charge some of those costs, consulting costs that we're paying for the regular budget, street sweeping, things like that.
Yeah, Dave and I already spoke about this, and we
Okay.
accounted for that in the draft budget, the preliminary
Okay.
budget. So, yeah, no, very good point.
All right, so then our next meeting is going to be December 11th, so let's have all that.
Sure.
And let's make it fun. Let's not make it dry like it normally is. Maybe you could use pictures instead of those papers, use some graphics, Paul. Think about it, you and Dave.
We'll get creative.
Yeah, maybe you need to have Scott help you. Okay, could you give us a tree planting update for the fall?
So contracts have been signed with Monahan. There's 75 street trees that are going in. And there's 150 park trees. Mike Horan is walking the parks and flagging the locations for the park trees. And Monahan is getting a list probably today, in fact, of the street trees themselves. So we went through our current list because there were people who requested trees, and then there were tree removals. And as a result of the tree removals, previously we wanted to replant trees that were removed, prior to the new ordinance. So we should have an updated list as early as today. We've been working pretty hard on that. We've had to go back out and visit each of these properties. We had a total of, I want to say, 280 different listings. And where some of them have already been addressed, so we're actually whittling that down, updating it, and once we have the updated list, we're going to send that over to Monahan. Once he gets that, he's going to call for a mark out, and he'll have the trees delivered and installed shortly thereafter. So probably by the end of this month or the beginning of December, the street trees will be planted, and that'll be complete. And the park trees will follow right after that.
And then let's not forget that we want to have a contact with each of the homeowner that we plant a tree in front of, letting them know that they, even in this time, they need to put a little bit of water on.
So that's a very good point. And one of the things that we changed in our list is we're adding columns and information, including people's emails. So we're going to also, in addition to leaving a door hanger or a letter, we're going to email them the letter in terms of the maintenance schedule and how to maintain the tree. Obviously, watering is not required, this late because the trees are dormant. But, in the spring, they have to follow this, and we're going to email them the schedule.
Okay.
Could you talk about when are the, I assume, or I would think that the tree stump grinding would happen before the planting, or is that doesn't matter?
No,
Because
it
there's a
does matter.
lot of, okay,
Yeah,
there's a lot of them.
we're getting caught up on that too, Mayor. We recognize we have a full list of tree stumps that need to be ground, and we're getting caught up on that.
I don't remember if I pointed this out to you, Mike, but if you could get that big one down by Tuscan School, right by the parking lot entrance on Harvard. It's a huge one. It was taken down a few years ago, I think, when they were or a couple years, I don't know. Just been there a long time.
Okay. We'll get that taken care of.
Thanks.
Sure.
Okay. Next up is the stormwater utility. Again, the schedule, Paul, just so you know, is the township commitment. We did receive the draft from Arcadis, the consultants. I'm going to be sending that out to the township committee probably today and we're going to be discussing it on the 18th of November. We're talking about a $70 charge, but there's going to be a think it's around 1,500 homes that will get a half charge, $35 a year. And then most of the homes will get the $70 charge. And then for residential, there's a smaller number that will get 105, and maybe even some of the larger properties will get 140. And that has all been calculated by the consultants using data that they got from the state of New Jersey. It looks like we'll be able to do the billing as part of the sewer fee. So we'll do a once a year billing, and you know, people will just pay that as they pay their sewer fee. And most of the uses in the ordinance are all the things we've talked about, everything from consultant to hard construction to maintenance, salaries, the administration. So, I mean, we don't want to, you know, we want to spend as much as we can on the ground work, but we're able to recoup some of our expenses. I believe it's there's a certain very small percentage that has to go to the state. That's required as part of the state law, so that whatever fee we collect. So as I said earlier, that does require a budget similar to, you know, just like we have the pool utility, that, you know, we have a separate budget that gets looked at by the township committee and gets approved. So that's something that you guys will have to work on. And
Is Joe K on board with the whole thing too, or?
We have to work on how it's gonna be built out.
I think Patrick has some
Yeah,
more current information.
we have been working on how it's built out, and we're confident that we can build for the first quarter of next year. You know, some particulars need to get worked to, some, you know, maybe specific properties that show up uniquely, I'll say, in our billing for sewer. But yeah, we'll work through those. I'm confident we'll have January 1 implementation.
Vic, you have a bunch of stuff highlighted in pink in this document, the ordinance.
That's from the consultants.
Oh, okay. Just something new stuff added, or?
No, those are questions that they've asked of us. Language, if we want, because they're using the New Brunswick ordinance as the model. And they want to
Okay.
know if that language that they've had there is the language we want to include in ours.
Okay. Talks a lot about green infrastructure, Paul.
I have a question, Vic. Did you share that with anyone from the environmental advisory committee, or can I
did not.
share?
No.
Can I share this with them?
Yep.
Thank you.
We like green infrastructure.
I know, you're welcome. 8 years ago.
Yeah, Deborah, just so you know, that, you know, there may be some changes to what we have, but certainly that's the first draft that we're looking at. Yes, you can share it with them.
Because they've been talking about it too, and also mentioned the fee that has to go to the state, and they're like in the weeds with some of this stuff sometimes, so they might have some good.
Okay. Okay, anything else on the utility? Will be the second one in the state, and they are giving us a credit policy too. We haven't received that yet.
Okay.
I don't know who's gonna ask for a credit in town, but I'm sure there'll be somebody or buddies. Okay, Tuscan Street traffic calming. Last meeting you mentioned that you've taken a look at some of the data, but you were going to dig into it a little deeper.
Yeah, we looked at the data, and we also spoke with Dynamic about this, and basically the data illustrated that the 85th percentile speed went down by almost 2 miles an hour, and the volume actually went down as well. So the measures that we implemented, I would say, were effective. The problem with Tuscan Street is that, you know, it's a cut through between Burnett and Spring. And I would argue that the volume is still heavy for that street because of that. So the speeding is not present based on the data, okay? But there's a lot of volume in cut through. So I think the town you know, has at its disposal several options to address, Tuscan Street. And, you know, one of those options could be a road diet. You know, adding striping to tighten the lanes. One of those options can be an all-way stop control, which would be at Tuscan and Franklin. We would have to do a warrant analysis evaluation on that. And then one of those options, similar to Rutgers, would be a speed hump. And I think that's really what the residents would want to see is a speed hump. That's what they were pushing for. We don't
But if
have
it's-
speed.
If it's not speeding and it's volume,
So that's where I was going is it's volume. That's really the issue. So a speed hump, what that's going to have the effect of doing is probably pushing some of that volume away from Tuscan Street. And that would get dispersed into the neighborhood. So I would not be against a speed hump as long as we can do a study on some of the surrounding streets. I'd recommend that just to evaluate the impacts of it, because there is going to be a displacement of volume. I do think that street gets a lot of volume. That's what they're seeing. I think it's more volume than speed.
So Paul, for some reason, Tuscan Street is the only north-south street, other than Prospect, to have parking only on one side of the street. There's no parking on the east side of the street. And as you know, if you park cars on the street, that also helps slow traffic. I think what we get is the concern about people coming off Burnett and racing up to Springfield. And that's the side where there's no parking. What would happen if we changed it and added parking as a first step without doing any of these other things? And if there are cars there and people have to slow down like all the other streets to let a car pass, and that's even better.
Sure. So from an engineering perspective, it's adding friction to the road, right? It's
Right.
adding cars on both sides. We have to verify the width of Tuscan. I want to say it's 28 feet or 30 feet. I'll double check the numbers. If it's 30 feet, then we could consider adding cars on both sides. That would have the same impact, I think, in terms of slowing cars down. There's no question that having that parking would slow cars down. The question is there sufficient road width? And that's something I would just want to double check before I make that recommendation.
But I mean, we do have streets that are like Vermont Street is not very wide.
Mm-hmm.
And that's got to be at least similar to Tuscan. And Wellesley, maybe Wellesley's a little wider, but yeah, I think if you could take a look at that. I mean, I don't think that the four-way stop or the speed hump should be our first options. And I'm concerned about, you know, you start striping it, then you have to put if you're putting a side stripe, a curb stripe, then you have to stripe in the center too, don't you? Because you have to narrow that lane.
So no, if you're doing side stripes and you're, you know, adding a gutter stripe, then you know, then a center line stripe would only be at the tails. It wouldn't be through the whole road.
Okay, all right. Well, I would say maybe the first step is, let's see if it could handle parking on both sides, which would serve as a deterrent to the speeding, particularly the speeding that's now going north off of Burnett up towards Springfield.
Okay.
yeah, I agree. Let's try it. I think it's
I'll
a
look at
great,
that option. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Let's hear
Wait,
about
can
the.
I ask a question about that? I was trying to pull up the bike map or something, but that's not a street that's targeted for bike lanes, is it? Because I would
I
just
doubt-
caution against adding more parking if maybe one day we want to take parking away.
I don't believe it is. Dave, do you know offhand if Tuscan Street is on the bike plan?
I don't think so, but I don't know.
Dave could.
Could we
pull
just
the
double
plan.
check that?
Sure.
as
we'll
we're
go over it.
Right now, and I'll have an answer for you during this meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, but first we want an answer on the traffic calming on Academy Street. I saw them working. I went by yesterday and then I saw them working on Newark Way. Give us a status of where we are with that. Are we gonna complete that this year? Blah, blah, blah.
So it's absolutely going to be completed this year. This is kind of a sore spot for me. I think the work on Academy was intended to be done during teachers' convention. And the contractor started, prior to that, they started in front of Newark Way and did that work, and they ran into a utility that they didn't expect, so they had to make a repair. And that kind of changed the equation. So I was pretty irate there, that wasn't done during teacher convention, vacation, the time off for teachers. So it's getting done. I think, Dave, do you know offhand, when they'll have that completed, Academy?
Said to me that they're targeting the end of this week. Realistically, I would expect them to actually be complete prior to next week. I'm loath to believe anything that they tell me at this point.
All right, so we're looking at probably a few more days of construction on Academy, realistically. By the time it's striped and it's finished and the pavement's done, we're looking at a few days.
So
I would
just
say
to
early
remind
next
us,
week.
on Academy, what we did is we bumped out the north and south corners, correct?
Yes. We
So that
switched.
makes crossing Academy easier and also crossing, was that Beach?
Yes.
Easy.
Yep.
Okay, and then on Newark Way, I know they were working at Artie's. Have they started over by the park entrance?
The park entrance was not part of that traffic calming bid. It was a bid alternate, and we never awarded that work.
Ah,
I know. But we have some extra money left over, and there's actually another traffic calming consideration, so we may be putting out another package.
but that won't get done this year.
Not likely this year, but early next year, early spring.
Ah. We should have done that one first as opposed to Artie's. All right. But the people going to Artie's will be safer. Yes, Dave.
To Miss Engel's earlier concern about the bike lane on Tuscan Street, she does recall correctly that that Tuscan Street is on the bike lane plan.
It is.
It
It's
is,
so
yes.
That portion of Tuscan, that portion of Tuscan Street
Yes,
goes what, that connects to Tuscan Road?
yes. It's the target to attach and
Oh, it is.
make DeHart
I
Park
stand
a
corrected.
destination.
So what if we just did a bike lanes there to calm traffic?
Yeah, but you're not doing a bike lane on each side. There's parking on one side now.
We'll look at both options, and I'll talk to Dynamic. I think Dynamic has to weigh in on this, but they flagged it as an option, and it's 30 feet wide, they're indicating. So we really have the option for both. And I think we could present that.
Cool.
Yeah, so this bike lane is just a concept, right?
Correct.
It's a conceptual layout.
Right, yeah. And we haven't had a lot of conversation about what the goals are and all that yet either, so. I mean, I understand, let's not do anything that's gonna make it harder, but we've been dealing with this can you stop sharing this? We've been dealing with this traffic calming problem on Tuscan for a long time. And I just don't know what's gonna be the solution there. I just don't
Right.
think striping is gonna work.
But I think bike lanes, I mean, a lot of research shows that bike lanes is a traffic calming measure. And so if we're talking about this conversation about putting bike lanes in, and we're talking about it on Parker, and we're doing the Greenway, we're doing it in pieces. So if this is a piece that needs traffic calming and it fits into the overall bike lane plan, I think it's just a worthy consideration.
Yeah, but it has to make sense. It just can't say, okay, here's a place where there's no parking. And then when you go on the other side of Springfield Avenue along the library, that's where parking is on Tuscan Street. So, how do you, it's not just this one section you have to look at. And then once you get to Tuscan Road, what happens then? Where's the bike lane? So just creating a little section of bike lane without having a larger understanding of what you're trying to do and making it coordinated doesn't make sense to me.
Right. No, I hear you, but I feel like we've been having these conversations about bike lanes and what is it going to look like, and we've been talking about how we're going to have to do it in pieces. So I hear what you're saying, but if we're talking about traffic calming measures, I'm just saying bike lanes should be on the table. And yeah, there has to be a greater plan, and then we would need a phase 2 and 3 for it to make sense. But it just seems like a artery to connect our parks. And so I just wouldn't want to add more parking on the other side of the street if we're going to be moving in the way of bike lanes in the future. I would rather, even if we don't do bike lanes right now, do something else for traffic calming than add parking if we're considering possibly taking it away down the road.
You may be, I'm not. I mean, that's a tough area there. And you have to deal with it on both sides of the street. It's fine. We don't have to put parking there, but parking is one solution. And to say that we're not going to put parking, we're not going to address this problem, which has been brought to us over and over again, and we tried to solve it and it's not being solved, I don't think makes sense either. I would not want to go back to them and say, well, we're going to put a section of bike lane that doesn't connect to anywhere else, and that's going to be your solution.
Right, but then Paul first started saying speed bumps could be solutions or whatnot. I'm just saying that I would just want to look at all the solutions, and I personally would prefer not to add parking if this is going to remain an artery on the bike map.
I think there's alternative parallel arteries that could be used. If speeding's been a problem, I always have a problem with speed bumps, speed humps, because they cost a lot of money. They cost regular maintenance, striping, and then redoing them, and then they get damaged by plows and such. So they're an expensive solution. I think parking on on both sides of the street would do more for traffic calming than a bike lane would. And it might be years before a bike lane might go there, but there are streets parallel to Tuscan that could be the path that connects the parks as opposed to Tuscan Street, which.
So Paul, let's do this. You take a look at what you're going to take a look at with striping, parking, and then also let's do the warrant analysis for the four-way stop.
Okay, we'll present our
Because I could
recommendation.
live with the four-way stop, at least something that either makes people drive slower going that northbound or stops them in the middle of the street.
I mean, similar to Lexington and Rutgers, what we did.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, four-way stop. Parker and Suffolk, Burr.
So we have a plan. We're actually preparing an RFP right now to go out the door for that work. So we have a plan from Dynamic for that exact purpose, and we'll get that out. I think Dave, what's the ETA on getting out that RFP? Probably the end of this week or early next week, right?
Early next week, yes.
So I think it's going to be it's going to be out for about 10 days or so, 7 to 10 days. And then we'll be able to award to, a contractor to get the work done. There's only like 4 or 5 companies that actually do this type of work, really, the striping work. So I think we'll be able to get it done this year. No questions about that.
So this is not weather dependent?
No. Thermoplastic is to a certain degree weather dependent, but it's not nearly cold enough for it to be a problem yet.
Okay, and we don't have to worry about curbing, that's already there, right? Any concrete work?
No concrete work. It's all striping and
good.
signage.
Okay. All right, Maple Terrace, we got a notice that the DEP has raised some questions about our permit application.
So amazingly enough, we spent an enormous amount of time on this with the DEP. they've already asked for a 30-day extension, and that's after carrying the application. In their review, we were hoping that this would have been done much sooner, but they discovered some questions that they had. I did attend a meeting with DEP and NV5, and nothing that they brought up is a concern with the project. I think nothing's insurmountable. I think there's just some detailed work that they need answered. We're providing that detailed work. And, the problem is their due date, I think, was on the 22nd, and they asked for a 30-day extension. So we agreed to a 30-day extension for them to finish their review, and we fully expect that we'll get an approval from them as a result of that.
Did we get any kind of documentation from them asking for an extension? A letter or an email or anything?
We did get some documentation, yes.
Okay. Can you forward that? So I want to share that with the neighbors.
Yes,
I want to keep them informed of what's going on.
yes.
I was going to recommend that. So Paul, they requested additional time to complete their review, but they also have questions about what we submitted in terms of our having to revise our submission.
So they had questions, based on a deeper review that they performed. And, I think the questions they had, I don't believe any of it is a serious concern in terms of the project. I think it's just details that they're looking for, additional data and details. They did have some concerns, some issues in terms of certain exceedances in certain areas, and I think that was explained by MB5. So I'm not concerned with it, but they're just going to need a little more time to finish the review.
Okay, and when did this meeting with DEP occur?
It occurred last week, I believe.
Okay,
Yeah.
and was it after that meeting that we were told that they need more time to complete their review, or was it in parallel to?
I think it was in parallel to, they had questions. At that moment, they were concerned about the deadline and being able to complete their review. And at that moment, they recommended, based on the questions, that they get an extra 30 days. They asked the town for an extension.
So what is the new deadline?
30 days from November 22nd. So it's, towards the end of December.
And are they entitled to another extension? Should they
No.
say they need more time?
No, just like the prior application, when we had to pull it, they only request and can only be provided one 30-day extension.
And in your understanding with NV5, did we sufficiently answer their questions, or are we also on our end during this period preparing additional information for them?
I think we answered many of their questions. I think there is some additional information that we're providing in terms of the printouts. They asked for, different forms of printouts, and, the file itself is so large. It literally takes a computer half a day to compute everything. So there's literally thousands and thousands of pages of data. They've asked for this information, and NV5 was compiling it for them.
I see. And did you get a general sense, based on your understanding with NV5 of, just whether or not they felt that this was more in line with what they were looking for when compared to our original submission?
I think NV5 fully expected that we would have had an approval by now. And that's what we were expecting. But so this was a bit of a surprise, these questions, so late in the hour. And we didn't expect to have questions like this so late in the process. But it came to be. This is what was presented to us from DEP. And, we're addressing them.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so get me that, Paul, please.
Will do.
What's the status of the East Branch of the Oway River? We're going to clean the dam.
So Fred shared, the last time I spoke to him about this, he was still trying to secure the permitting and he was working towards that. I've also seen billing from him as well. So they are actively working on this, but I think it's a permitting issue. Dave, do you have anything beyond that, regarding Fred's work on this?
Specific to Fred's work, no, if anyone wants to be bored by tales of permitting, I have that kind of history, but I don't want to, that's not appropriate for now.
I think we'll forego that. Thank you.
Okay. Paul, let's go through the list of items here.
Happy to. The police, the SEPI grant, so obviously the plans are complete, they're ready for bidding, but we're still waiting for the formal grant authorization letter, I believe, Dave, is that correct? You know, we
This is the
tried,
BPU $250,000 grant?
this is the $250,000 grant through BPU, correct?
Yeah,
So before we go out and bid, we don't want to violate any parts of the grant, so we want to make sure that we can do that. But the plans are ready. They're ready to bid. I did express concern before based on the greenhouse funding, whether or not we would have sufficient funding. We did budget a little over $600,000 for the project, and you know, we're hopeful that that's enough money. But I just want to manage expectations. If we bid this out and it comes in light, you know, that was a concern based on the greenhouse bid opening that we received previously.
So is the 600 include the 250 or is it in addition to the 250?
It's a reimbursement grant, so, you know, we have to front the 600 or the 650, we have to front that, and it's a reimbursement grant, so it's not 600 plus 250, it's the way it's set up with the bonding council, I think it's 600, that's that a little over 600 that we have. So. Moving on, town hall, the greenhouse skin replacement has been publicly bid, and you know, we're looking to move forward and award that project. The woodland, we did have a heating oil tank removed from the woodland, so the old tank that was used for heating the building was removed. It was cut up and removed. And also, Margaret Hickey is moving forward with her recommendations and her report and her findings for the woodland. So,
And that is the report on the siding and the doors?
siding, doors, and also a structural report as well.
Right.
Yes.
Just going back to town hall, go ahead, Nancy, you have Bergdorf, go ahead. I mean,
No, Woodland, yeah.
Woodland.
Just, I don't know if we can count the yard there on the side. Remember I brought up to you that it used to be sort of forested in the front off to the side, not blocking the building. Can you add that section to tree planting over there?
Okay. We'll certainly
I
take a
don't-
look at that, Mayor.
Pat, you can like find out if we can use some of the OSTF money or the park trees that Mike can include that in the list of park trees, maybe. Okay, sorry, thank you.
We have a budget for trees, so one way or the other, we'll get it done.
Great.
I'm sorry, Paul, just the town hall. That wall behind the flag in the meeting room that the mayor and I look at every time we say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah, so we did put out an RFP for working on that, and Pro Painters was the little bit around that. Do we have a schedule from Juan, Dave, in terms of a final date?
See them
we
outside.
do. Let me just verify that with myself.
I can see from the window of my office, they're going from the parking lot into the meeting room.
Yes, they're working today.
There you go.
Confirmation. That's very good action, Paul.
Can you, Dave, remember to follow up with me after I've something else I want to point out in the building?
Just one
Will
quick
do.
thing on the woodland. We need to make sure the DPW is constantly removing those leaves on the east side of the building, because every time that door opens, one of those doors open, the leaves just blow in there. And we have a senior event there tomorrow. So we just want to have safety and keep those leaves from blowing inside.
Okay, we'll take care of that. We've also been closely monitoring the scuppers on all the flat roofs as well. You know, we could never clean them enough. There's always leaves clogging them. So I'd say, Pat, if there's, you know, if there's some type of notice we could put out in terms of people who monitor these buildings, any ponding water, you know, those scuppers have to be cleaned. That should be reported to to DPW as soon as possible.
We'll talk to the building attendants.
Okay. The Senior Citizen Center, 106 Burnett, we did remove a steel oil tank from there as well. That's an old tank that was used to heat the building. That's been removed as well. The Hilton branch, obviously the roof's done. We also restored the rooms, the meeting room and the create space room. So it's been painted and it's been cleaned up. The flooring has also been completed. So the one last thing is there's some punch list work. I know they destroyed a bird bath and some other things when they did the roofing, so that has to still be completed. The job hasn't been closed out as a result of it.
We had a bird bath on the roof.
No, they were dropping material from the roof and
Ah.
destroyed it.
Yeah, they weren't the cleanest group.
They did good masonry work, but they were not not careful for sure.
Yeah.
The library construction project, so we did get a submittal regarding the sanitary sewer. I was happy to see that come through, but we did have comments which we've submitted to Lee to address with their engineers.
So Paul and Dave, I want you guys to think about any kind of requirement for them if they do paving in December. You know, what we would want to see, and then what guarantees we would have that they wouldn't have, you know, that in case we need to have them come back and do it again in the spring.
So normally when we pave, we would have a warranty associated with that, you know, 2-year maintenance guarantee. So I think we'd hold them to the same standard. We'd want to see, you know, a 2-year guarantee. And if there was cracking as a result, if things started coming apart, then, you know, we could at least ask them to address it.
Okay.
Civic House, we're waiting for funding. And in terms of firehouses, the Boyd Nav Firehouse, we did put out a bid package for a roof replacement. And Dave and I are going through the bid award for that right now. We have sufficient funding, but we do have a concern with, you know, one of the bidders. So we're working on that now, and hopefully we'll get clarity in the near future.
Just on the Civic House, no work will be done then, right, this year? Because we don't have sufficient money. Okay,
Correct. And that's getting built into the budget.
great, thank you.
Moving on to parks. So we have a recommendation for D Hart. We had an RFP for professional services. As you recall, we did get a grant, a $65,000 grant for professional design services. We interviewed 3 different firms, and we're recommending VHB to do the work. They actually are more of a national engineering firm. They have a large contingent of professionals, and they have professionals that have worked on, you know, athletic fields in Princeton University and other places, and they have a pretty large breadth of experience. So, you know, in talking with them, their approach was similar to what I think Dave and I were thinking in terms of how to address D Hart. So it's consistent with what we were thinking in terms of an approach. Dave, you've been working on the inclusive playground. You want to just give a brief update on that?
I'm working up the environmental assessment report for the DCA right now. And I'd say as of this conversation, I'm about 60% complete. I have a lot of the mapping, the history, and I do want to give due credit to to Susan Newberry and the historic group for providing a lot of records and information.
And a note on that, the DEP is woefully behind on providing grant documents for that, so we still don't have a grant agreement. I've been on them to get it. They keep saying it's coming. They did tell us that they don't need to review the RFP for professional services for that, so we'll get that together and put it out. But those professional services are reimbursable, and so we wouldn't want to award before entering into a grant agreement for this.
They haven't tipped their hand on any sort of timeline for the agreement paperwork then, have they?
Months ago, so we'll keep on them to get it to us.
Can I
All
ask
right,
a
then I'll-
question? Pat, Missy had mentioned that some towns are already like breaking grounds. Why is it so slow for us to get all this done from the DEP? Like other towns just got it earlier, or do you know?
Are they breaking ground on this past year?
That's what she,
I'd
that's
be,
what she said. I'm not sure. That's what she said. So maybe you want to confirm with her and see if there's a way to like push, because there was a concern about, will we be able to get the equipment that we want if other towns are breaking grounds, and will there be a backlog?
I'll talk to her on it. I'd be surprised unless it was a shovel-ready project at that point, but I'll talk to her about it and I'll give you an update.
Just go back to DeHart, the VHV, is that what you said?
VHB.
P or V? P is it Peter?
Victor Harry Berry.
Okay, thank you. When is the township committee going to approve that contract?
We have a draft recommendation letter that I'm finalizing now, and it'll go out shortly. So if there's time to get it on the next meeting, then we could certainly prepare a resolution for that.
Next
Okay,
meeting.
so if it's not then the meeting after that, but Patrick, I think this is an opportunity for our public information officer to write something up about this.
Okay.
This is a step we said we were going to take. People think we're not doing anything about this. So I think we want to get ahead and show folks that we're actually, putting out a contract, and that this firm has a lot of experience, blah, blah, blah.
Agreed.
And
Go
go ahead, Paul. What else you have?
Sorry. In terms of parks maintenance, I just want to update everyone that, we're moving forward. We've winterized the buildings, obviously the field maintenance, the blankets, we're, gearing up for that. Pretty much winterizing our parks, the water fountains, et cetera, making sure that, everything's tightened up so it doesn't get damaged in the winter time.
And what's going on with the Duck Pond Bridge? Are we finished?
The Duck Pond Bridge is complete. The ADA rail was installed, and I think they did a good job. I don't know if anyone's had a chance to look at it, but it's a stainless rail that gets bolted to the wood handrail, and the brackets are curved in accordance with the posts, and I think it looks really sharp. We did notice some wood cracking on the posts and the rails, but I think that's part of the natural process of just moisture changing in the wood that was brought up by HPC. But we've noticed a similar issue with the Civic House Bridge. It's it's just a natural phenomenon that wood undergoes when it's exposed outside.
Did you think it wasn't done, Vic?
If you go to the HPC, that's what you think.
Oh, God. Okay.
But now I can let them know it's complete.
Yes.
Okay.
So moving
Anything
on,
the pool?
I'm sorry, pool. So the building has been winterized, and DPW has assisted with that. So Ms. Mancuso could probably give a better summary in terms of the pool itself, but from our perspective, the building's been winterized, and we'll assist with any of the covers. I don't know if the covers have been
Covers are on,
They are, okay.
and you're also having some trees replaced, right? That had died from a recent planting.
Yeah, that's going to be replaced because they died. They're actually getting replaced by downs. So that's part of last year's contract, and they're gonna replace that. And, you know, in terms of supplementing, if there's any other trees that are needed for that, we can also provide that too. Moving on to roads and parking lots. The village center parking lot has been paved and the concrete work is complete. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it. I think it seems to be functioning pretty well. It's now one-way circulation. You can't make a left onto Baker anymore, which I'm thrilled about. That was a serious safety issue. But now it's a one-way. You know, overall, I think I've gotten some positive feedback on that. You know, we're still working out some kinks in terms of signage. We just made some changes yesterday, changed out some of the signage, added some signage. And, you know, we've been trying to consolidate dumpsters, working with Aaron Rose on that. You know, there's still some dumpsters that are out there. Some of them are oversized and, you know, we're trying to get it consolidated. There is a decorative rail that has to go up. It's being constructed now. We've approved it. So we're waiting for that. And we're also going to landscape along the embankment. We're not going to perform a full screen, but we are going to provide some vegetative landscaping to help filter buffer that area for enhanced, you know, beauty. So, but, you know, overall, I think you get a pretty good sense of the function of the parking lot.
May I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
First of all, yes, you're absolutely right, Paul. Wow, what a vast improvement, right? It's really a pleasure driving through there now. So you may not know the answer to this question. I brought it up at Code yesterday. Didn't really get an answer there. We'll continue exploring this, see how it plays out. But, you know, what enforcement power, if any, do we have to sort of force the issue of the dumpster consolidation? I mean, it is something that we presented to them in the beginning when we talked about this work, that this was coming and getting everyone to agree to it. But now I'm concerned that at least a couple of these businesses will maintain the status quo and leave their oversized dumpsters the way they are and not order new smaller ones that could fit into the new enclosure area. So, you know, what can we as the township do about that? After, of course, we've talked to them and worked through the proper channels with Aaron Rose and this, that, and the other. What else can we do, if anything?
Well, first of all, it may be an enforcement issue, right? If we have a code against dumpsters just being out like that. But, you know, I would hope that after we did all that work, that merchants would try to comply.
Oh,
try to
Paul,
capitalize on that.
let's not be unrealistic here.
Yeah, me too. I would hope they want to comply because it looks so much nicer and it's neater. And but you know, I'm just concerned that you know, we are getting some questions already. This is not coming out of just sort of what's possible. This is based on a little pushback that that Aaron Rose and I have already received.
So Dean,
Yeah, go ahead, Nancy. Sorry.
to your point, like normally health would inspect dumpsters, but that's when they're disgusting and dirty and they're rats and stuff. Do we have anything in the code about, I know we talked about this years ago, long before we knew we were paving. Do we have anything in the code that requires surrounding containing something about the dumpsters themselves for physical appearance?
I don't think
No,
we
we
do.
don't.
Well,
No.
Under special improvement districts, we have, we do mention trash receptacles and trash enclosures. We'll have to look at it more and see what enforcement opportunity we have.
Yeah, maybe it's carrot stick for this, Dean.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. And then Vic, can you remind us yesterday, you mentioned this at Code. I don't remember exactly what you said, but you did read off from the code the other issue here, which is the distance of the dumpster from the business. Can you say that again?
So there's two things. One is that we lease the back part of those lots.
Right.
And so, but there's a portion of the building lot. There are two lots. There's the portion of the building lot where the building is, and then we lease the back of it. But we don't lease the maybe 10, 20 feet off the building. So if somebody puts their dumpster 10 to 20 feet off the building before our lease starts, our lease spot, I'm not sure that we can do anything about it. Additionally, there is a health code that says you have to have a dumpster for a food business. You have to have a dumpster so many feet from the back, from the door.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Closer.
So for example, there's that dumpster right behind Jerry Rose that Jerry Rose uses.
Right.
I think that's on the curb. I think that might be in the portion we do not lease.
Right.
So therefore, I'm not sure what enforcement we have over that. If they had it in the area where we lease, like for example, I think in Village Coffee, where their dumpster is, we lease that, that would be a different story.
Well, you know, it's in their best interest to remove it because that concrete area is mountable. We intended for some of their trucks to be back there.
All right.
as
Deborah
they-
wants to say something. Let Deborah talk.
Yeah,
Deborah?
thanks. I just wanna, I hear enforcement, but as a former business owner, I know there's also a cost if you're talking about them replacing their dumpsters. So I'm thinking more incentives. Is there some kind of program where there could be discounted something? Cause I mean, that's just a big one-time cost for, I don't know what the cost is, but I don't know if we have any partners or if we can do some bulk buying or incentive-based marketing towards them instead of just going towards enforcement.
So the idea was to consolidate the garbage places in that one area, and hopefully either the businesses would get together and use either appropriate size separate dumpsters or a combination dumpster where everybody would pay into it. But
But
that
are they
has not
big?
happened.
Is it big? Is it big enough for them to all be able to use it, the food business and stuff, and like has like health weighed in on that kind of thing?
It is big. Yes, it is big enough because this is something we talked about in the beginning when we were designing this and conceiving it. It is big enough for all of them to use, but they'd have to have smaller dumpsters than they currently have now, which has the consequence to them of increasing their pickups, their collection, right? So does that have an additional financial burden on them? I'm sure it does. I don't know what it is. No one has complained about the financial burden per se. But you know, we'll continue talking to them. Yeah, I mean, I'm not interested in like, you know, hardcore enforcement, but I am interested in knowing, you know, what everyone's duties and responsibilities are and how we can encourage folks to do this after we put in a lot of work to make it better back there. Because remember, you know, they wanted us to do this too, right? Like no one said, oh no, don't do this, leave it the way it is. This serves them, and guess what? We paid for it, right? So that is sort of the incentive in my mind, but I know that doesn't sound as sensitive as it should. So we shall continue looking into it. I just brought it up for input from everyone, and I appreciate everyone's input.
Thank you. And that's, I think, what made me react a little bit because it felt a little negative towards business owners. But like even you're saying, replace their dumpster, get a smaller dumpster cost, have to increase pickup. Like what if they have too much garbage? Like their garbage flow is different depending on when they get their deliveries and their customer base. And so it's a lot more goes into it logistically and financially that I think might be considering. And so I'm just wondering if we're hearing what their concerns are, like why haven't they moved forward? And then are we looking at each of those challenges and figuring out ways to help improve it?
Sure, that's fair. Absolutely fair. And Paul, I think part of this is also that, you know, we focused on just getting the construction done, the paving rather, and all that good stuff. And maybe it's just a question of going back to the merchants and saying, hey, so we're finished now. And so the last remaining piece here is for us to consolidate the dumpsters, because I think people just don't know, as opposed to they're not wanting to do it. We're not there yet.
Yeah, Mr. Daffis, I'm happy to work with Erin Rose on this. I mean, we've sent some emails on this, but we're happy to work with her, you know, in terms of if there's another meeting that would be helpful for the merchants, we could talk about it. We could set that up, you know, like a Zoom meeting or an on-site meeting, whatever she prefers. We're happy to help with that.
Okay, I'll follow up and loop us all in. And thank you, Vic, for the, we talked about this more than we needed to, but I appreciate it.
Go ahead, Bo.
So in terms of road repairs, the road paving is complete. There are some additional items that we've authorized for them to work on, and the schedule we received, I believe, Dave, was November 24th that they're coming out and finishing those items.
Yes.
You know, that would include the sidewalk area on Franklin and Irvington Ave. That would include, you know, a area on Jefferson Ave where there's some ponding water, you know, and some other items. So they'll be doing that work on the 24th, and then we'll be able to close out that project. In terms of county projects, obviously we have the 11 intersections on Valley Street. That's ongoing. The sidewalk was poured between Tuscan and Baker. You know, but there's other portions that are just, for lack of a better word, sloppy, the intersections, and they're torn apart. So I know I've spoken to Asif in the past about this in the county, and you know, I think we're just trying to make it as safe as possible for people. This is a county project, but you know, we're constantly reinforcing with the county the need for safety measures. So
Yeah, Paul, I talked with the executive's office about it, and he was following up with Sanjeev. And I did tell him that you guys were working with Asif, and but that, and they were having problems because they had different subs coming in, right, to rip everything up. That's why everything was ripped up at once instead of doing intersection by intersection. But I think leaning on them a little more or maybe having our cops make sure there's a safe walkway along where it's ripped up, because some places they've ripped it up and not provided any pedestrian walkway in place of it. So there's literally no place for them to walk. So since they have a cop on site every day, can you work with the chief, and maybe if they don't do it, we should do it? Because we can only, you know, hammer the county if they're not out there enough, they're not seeing it on a daily basis. I think we have a cop on site who's being paid by the county, then work with them if you could to make sure if the contractor provides no safe walkway, that we do it.
yeah, Mayor, first of all, we'll continue to work with the county, and I know it's been difficult, but we've gone so far as to even offer to use our barricades, our DOT approved barricades. We've offered that to the county. We've offered to even use a skid steer, provide them a skid steer. I've offered to have DPW operate the skid steer to place the barricades. And, you know, we've come up with other measures. They turned us down on all of those things. So we've actually offered, you know, a solution, and that was to close down the traffic in the southbound direction when they were doing the walkway between Tuscan and Baker. And they did take advantage of that during construction. So they took our advice on that to make it safer for pedestrians to cross. But I agree with you there, you know, we have to push harder and we have to push more. We've been pushing, but you know,
Yeah.
at the same
I
time.
mean, can't we even do something on site ourselves without asking, just put up some kind of walkway like by Oakview?
I'll
Or
look at
wherever.
It's tough because I don't want to interfere with their construction. I don't want to, I don't,
That's why I don't think barricades are the answer, because they're not easily movable. But if they're not providing any walkway, even cones would be better than nothing.
you know. You know, whenever we put pedestrians in the traveled way, it concerns me. So that's when
Yeah, I know. Well, and that's the other conversation with the chief, is to have whatever cops there make sure they assist a pedestrian trying to get around.
we'll take a look, Mayor,
They're
for
there.
sure.
I know, I'm just saying it's worth mentioning.
Okay,
Pat,
Thanks
when
for
you go
saying
out
that,
there,
Nancy. Thanks for saying that, because we're talking about not just pedestrians, but school children. So they're going to MMS along these routes. And a lot of
no, the
times
crossing,
the road with no cones.
yeah, the crossing guard has had, quite the exciting time over
Yeah.
by Baker. So.
okay.
Okay, Paul, let's go.
So, community development block grant, the 2023 bus, we were told at the end of October we're getting it. Now it's the end of November. There was an issue with the air conditioning unit. We've seen pictures of the truck and the chassis, and they're working out these issues. I spoke with the county, and as long as we get it before December 20th, we don't have to ask for an extension from them, and I think that's what we're pushing for. But it's very frustrating because it's right there, and we can't put our hands on it, so it hasn't been delivered yet. The 24 project is actually engineered by Roberts Engineering. We provided comments, and we're going to get that on the street shortly.
Patrick, can you announce on the township committee on the 18th that the bus was delayed, the senior bus was delayed? Because
Yeah.
a lot of people have it on their tick list.
Will do.
Safe routes to schools, we did approve paperwork that the DOT had sent us to get this project moving. It's right now in the hands of the feds to approve, and our understanding is it could take another month or even a little more for them to approve it. So once they approve it, we can authorize the preliminary design. As I indicated before, the state, the program actually reimburses the township for the design. And because we're using one of their design engineers, it's just the process takes a long time. Stormwater, I think we've talked earlier about stormwater.
So just one thing, Paul, we did get a draft of the infiltration study, and you're going to get some more information, and that'll come up at a future engineering public works meeting.
Yes, so Mott McDonald is preparing the backup information and a report for us for the infiltration study, and once we get that, we'll forward that to everybody. We're also put out a bid package putting out the Maplewood siphon. That's the siphon project on Maplewood Ave, and we're essentially lining that siphon project. So we're interested in getting that addressed as soon as possible as well.
Can you send Dean and Aaron Rose a little briefing on that so that they're aware of what's going to be happening in the village?
Yeah, we'd be happy to do that, sure.
Thank you. And may I ask just a quick question on an item that just came up, and I couldn't unmute myself fast enough in the car here, multitasking. The Safe Routes to School DOT grant, Paul, can you remind us the scope of that? The
Sure.
money is used exactly for what?
So we received a initial grant amount of $460,000 under Safe Routes to Schools. And that was to improve approximately 40 intersections through the township with high intensity flashing beacons for pedestrian safety. As the project evolved, we actually had an opportunity to get the funding for the design also reimbursed from the state. So we took advantage of that. And we're right now in the process of getting the preliminary design approved by the state. And once that happens, they'll move forward with design documents. But, there's approximately 40 intersections that are getting improved with rapid flashing beacons, push button safety beacons.
That's great. I think that's another point that we need to communicate to the public to let them know that we are looking into this. I mean, especially in light of some recent things that have happened that we've talked about.
Yeah, we're excited for the project. So, but the process, because it's using federal monies, it just takes a long time.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Under traffic calming, we did receive a request for Woodland Road, traffic calming for Woodland Road, and there was a follow-up to that. We remeasured data on Woodland Road and found that the speeding was not there and the volume wasn't there. So traffic calming is not warranted for Woodland Road. And we talked about traffic calming at Artie's, also at Academy Street, and we're looking at potentially the park. We may, be able to do that early spring.
Paul, just on the Prospect Oakland intersection. I know I guess the police put the cones out there? Or did you guys do it?
They put out the cones initially. Dave and I went out and we made some adjustments with the cones, added some additional cones there.
Okay, is there a way that we could get a standardized cone that would go, standardized size cone? It looks like just a hodgepodge of stuff. And it should be one of those 3 feet high cones. We have some small cones there too. It should be organized and look presentable. And just so that we remind ourselves, we are, and I see Deborah left. I gave her the wrong information. We're not paving this in 2025. We're paving this in 2026, correct?
Yes,
And in the interim, we'll be doing, in 2025, we'll be doing the design work, correct?
correct.
So anything that we're gonna do with bike lanes, anything we're gonna do with bump outs, any kind of intersection enhancements, that's all gonna be decided next year, right?
Yeah, it's all part of the design.
Okay, so in the interim, at least at this intersection, we're gonna leave the cones up for a while? Is that the
Yes.
plan?
That's the plan.
Okay. So I just want to make sure we're all on the same page there. So we really do need to have a standardized set look there with the cones, both there and at I guess Elmwood's the other intersection where we have cones.
Okay, we'll take care of that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, the recycling stuff?
Moving on to recycling. So just to give you a heads up, I'm actually, right after this meeting, I'm leaving for Bay Shore. There's a on-site meeting with the Environmental Commission. They wanted to visit the site, and I'll be meeting them for a tour of the Bay Shore facility. So we're going to be touring that, but nothing new to add beyond that, I believe, in terms of recycling.
Where are we with the contracts for Basso? We have one more year left. I feel like I lost track of time.
Yeah, we had a resolution approving, I believe, up through 2025 Basso. So
Okay.
that was circulated. And I believe we had a 3-year contract with Bay Shore, so we're still under that 3-year contract.
Okay.
In terms of jitney service, so I do have something to discuss. There's really 2 things to discuss on the jitneys. So NJ Transit did come out with a revision to their schedule. They're adding a 642 that stops at Maplewood, and I believe there was a 701 that's actually getting eliminated. So they've added a 642, they've added a 657 stop, and they're eliminating a 701. And last year they introduced a 718 to Maplewood Station. So we had looked at changes to our jitney schedule. I met with Pierre, our head jitney driver, and we walked through and actually came up with some strategy to address the new timing of the schedule. And I think what it comes down to is all 3 routes, we're going to add a whole new run that would bring people to the station at 6:28 for the 6:42 train. And there's room in between the first and second run previously. There's room to add a whole nother run. So there would be a total of 7 runs in the morning and 8 in the evening. This run would be added to all 3 jitney routes. So I had sent a draft yesterday to Mr. Weary. I'm not sure, Mr. Weary, if you've had a chance to even look at it. but I'm happy to go over it with you, today or tomorrow, whenever you have time, and we could go through it together.
Yeah, I looked at it and responded. It looks good. We should get updated schedules on our website, and then we'll put out a message to the public. That could be done as early as today.
Okay. So I don't know, does anyone on this call have an interest in that schedule, looking at it, or can we just simply upload it based on this?
I think we should upload it, but I do think the whole committee should have access to this updated information.
Okay.
Yeah, we can circulate that and it'll be posted on the website as well. Like I said, hopefully as early as today.
The second item that I have for the jitney is one of the drivers gave notice, and they're moving on to a different position, different job. So, as they're actually giving notice, and I think they're driving through December for us. We have some time to fill the position, but it's not something I want to wait on, obviously. So we have a total of 7 drivers now. If that person leaves, we'll have 6. And it's getting tight. So we did increase the pay for our jitney drivers, and we're going to work towards getting this advertised as soon as possible.
That makes sense.
So.
Paul, what's the status of the new electric buses?
Dave, you probably have a better update than I do, but I know it's in the hands of the state right now. Go ahead.
Yes. The DEP still has it. The division director is reviewing the application at this time, and they've not been willing to provide a timeline for me.
And this is why the Democrats lost the election, because they can't get shit out the door.
Agreed.
Unbelievable. All these
Agreed.
great programs, and then it doesn't get on the street and no one knows anything's happening.
Right.
Okay. Anything else? Any old business, Paul? New business?
I've got one for old business. Ms. Engel and I had met with the bicycle working group. It's a group of bicycle, enthusiasts and people who routinely bike in Maplewood. We're working with them on providing feedback to this committee and to the township committee on implementation and design of bike routes, as well as working on, town-wide developing interest in biking and programming around biking. And Robert Balesta is part of that group and is with us today. He had provided some from the group, some feedback to you, Mr. DeLuca. I also shared that with Mr. Kittner with recommendations on the Prospect Street and Donnell Street bike lane implementation.
Parker.
Thank you.
Parker Ave.
Parker and Donnell.
Right. And so we got that, I think, yesterday. And so that needs to get to John McCormick.
Yes. We'll make sure he gets it.
Thank you for looking at it. We're just wanting to help the process, and we're excited about the movement to get these lanes in, and so hopefully our notes are helpful to that.
We'll make sure it gets to the traffic engineers, dynamic traffic, and for consideration. So thank you very much.
Just a note on the Friday night, I was over on Parker and around maybe 7 or so. Anyway, there were a ton of cars parked on the street and on Parker. I know and this was the section between this was between Orchard and Irvington Ave. There were a lot of cars there, and I know that we got some reports that there were not a lot of cars on Parker. I think that's the case from Boyden West, but there are a lot of cars from Boyden South East. because those lots are, you know, they're narrower and the driveways are single driveways and a lot of people park on the street there. So we have to take that into consideration. So just on that, you know, I don't know who's going to be running committees next year, so we'll be, you know, hopefully this committee will be dealing with that Parker stuff and meeting with residents starting in next year. We won't be able to do it before the end of the year. One other item I want to bring up, the Springfield Avenue Partnership has put out an RFP and has received submissions for painting of electric boxes up on Springfield Avenue. So we'll be painting, and I'll be bringing it to the Township Committee on not the designs, but just the concept. We've talked about it before, but they'll be painting the boxes that with various designs. And Paul, I know the county maintains those boxes. Do you think we need to notice them, just that that's going to happen, or?
I think it's a good practice to notice them,
Okay,
see if they have any objection to that.
I don't want them to miss it.
Yeah.
You know, that they don't see those big brown things out there because they're attractive. They don't know what they are.
Usually they try to hide them.
Yes, I know. These are going to be, well, we're going to hide them under some paint, so,
There you go.
okay. Anything else?
That's all I have.
Anybody else? If not, a little shorter than normal. Thank you, everybody.
Good meeting. Bye.
See you.
Bye.
Thank you.